it's such a fine balance, because you could be coming from compassion. You might even speak a little rough and coarse because now you want bala for the other person, but it could just take that slight thing to fall off, because then you could get growth. The moment anger's come into it, even though you was doing so well, you was balancing perfectly, you had the compassion going on, and then that just creeps in, and then bang, you're off. And then that's what I refer to, then I've just walked away from Vaheguru again. As long as I keep telling myself, no, I want to go back. I like it with Vaheguru. It's much better with Vaheguru. Instead of being so hard to ourselves. I can't believe you got angry. Oh my God. And if I just said to myself, I don't want to be here, I want to go back to Vaheguru, I think we've got a much better chance to walk away from that vikar. And if it was just to frame something like that, and it's true, like, who wants to be there? Like, we all want to, we all rather be with Vaheguru. Like, who wants to be there? And that's the truth. But we sometimes be so hard on ourselves, we take longer to go back to Vaheguru.
You break it, like you said, you just break yourself even more.
And
you're shooting yourself down even more than having that compassion for yourself to say, look, you fell, get back up.
Welcome to the Japji Sahib podcast. In today's episode, we'll be going through the 11th Pauri stanza of Jap Bani, blessed and given to us by Guru Nanak Dev Ji. Today, we're going to be covering and looking at, is it possible to just somehow switch on these divine qualities within ourselves, like compassion? Or is it something we can work towards? And if it is, then how do you even get there? So before we get into it, let's say a fateh to our guest, Harpreet Kaur, that will be joining us today for this episode. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we're going to get straight into the first line, Pangti, where Maharaj is saying, Suniai Sara Guna ke Gaah. What we'll do is we'll break down some of these words literally first. And so the Suniai is always translated to, through listening to the one's name, that deep inner connection to Vaheguru. Some call that the intuition, which is beyond even our life experiences, just a deeper knowing coming from that divine intelligence. So from that, Sara is going to be translated here to oceans, and Guna are qualities, the divine qualities of God. Gaah is translated to deep. When we put this together, it reads to say one obtains the deep ocean of divine virtues. So when we look at that, what are some of these divine virtues? We looked at some of those in the last Pauri, but Maharaj gives a list of them to us in Gurbani. And that list is Sat Santookh, Daya, Dharam, Sach. So there's a few Pangtiyan, Veerji Preacher, that will come up with all of these five. And because we often see the four that comes up, but here we've got five listed. And so these are these divine qualities. Sat here, like Professor Sahib Singh translated it, that when Sat and Santookh come together, and the Sat here, the Tatta's got an Ankar underneath it, the Sat can be translated to when you become of a giving nature. I was listening to somebody a few days ago, and interestingly, they said that that's actually one of the natures of God. God is naturally just giving. So again, when we get closer to that divine light, so when we get closer to that light of Vaheguru, we naturally become more giving. So these, I think, are really great indicators for us as well to be able to look at, because sometimes we can be in this illusion to think, oh, am I close to Vaheguru or am I not close to Vaheguru? And when Maharaji say to us that karmi apo apni ke nede ke dur, that some are closer and some are further away. But Gurbani can be used for us to have a look at, and it should be our kasavati, our go-to, our touchstone to have a look at. Actually, am I close or am I far away? Because I don't want to be in this. I don't want to be like in this illusion of thinking, yeah, I'm all good, I'm with Vaheguru, but when I read Gurbani, it might tell me something else. So if here Sat, one of the qualities of Vaheguru, Saraguna ke Gaah, is Sat in this context being when you become more giving. And if we're not, if we're still very self-centered and we're living a life that is very selfish, and then surely that is an indication showing us that we're not close to Vaheguru. Not that Vaheguru isn't close, but we've created this veil and layers between me and Vaheguru. Because if I was close to Vaheguru, naturally I would be like that. I would naturally be more giving. Yeah. So I love it when somebody makes that face, and that's what I, it's always good to have a guest like that, because then I can get challenged, because a preacher normally just agrees with me. And so, yeah, what are you thinking?
I was thinking about rituals, and I was thinking that someone can look like they're giving, and doing seva and stuff like that, but inside they're not giving. Yeah, it's a ritual. So I think the intention behind something is just as important as the action.
No, 100%. So this isn't. So this is talking about when your nature becomes that.
But then,
how would somebody to know?
So then that ritual might be a ritual at first. It's like a child, how they learn to do something. Yeah. They'll learn to do it. They don't know why they're doing it first. And then sometimes the comprehension comes after the actual action. And it's the same with, that's when you're saying it, does it make you more closer or not? It's more that you could do something and at first it's not, it's the right thing to do, but your intention's not there. But then with Guruji's Kirpa, it becomes one, and the intention comes from doing the action.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it makes sense, totally. So, in the way I was explaining it was actually the other way round. So it's not that now somebody is giving to get there, but it's to know if I'm close to Vaheguru, you will naturally be that. That makes sense?
But to naturally be something, say for example, I know myself, I can naturally, just my thought pattern can be negative, and I have to work on it being positive. But if I work on it long enough, it might become then my nature to be naturally positive.
So that's our second step is then, how do you get there if you're not? Yeah. So that's so what we're saying here, when we look at Suniai Sara Guna ke Gaah, what that Bhagta is saying is that when you've got that connection with Vaheguru, and you just are being guided, and that intuition is just there constant. So this is saying that you will obtain all of these divine virtues, this ocean-filled, deep divine virtues. And so they will just be there. And so before we look at if we haven't got them, and then how do we get there, this just recognizing first is that what this is saying is that if you are in the avastha of Suniai, you will just naturally have those, ocean, that deep as an ocean virtues. And if you haven't, then that's okay, because that just it helps to know
what work you got to do.
Yes. Yeah. And so this helps us to kind of know, okay, so I'm not there, but that's where whole point of a journey, the whole point of being on a spiritual path is for us to know that that's where we want to go. Yeah. So this tells us like the ideal. or it just tells us that's how it is. If you really are in tune with listening to Vaheguru from inside, you will have that. You will have these. You will just have that nature of giving. You will be Sada Santok. You will be content. You won't be chasing external pleasures to have that inner contentment. But you can enjoy the pleasures of the world, but you're not doing it for the purpose of contentment. Yeah. And if we're still chasing them from external things, that means that we still haven't yet dived into that ocean, which is okay, but at least we know then that that's where we want to be, that's where we want to go. Does that make more sense?
It makes more sense. The question in my mind is that, what if Guruji's give back at one point you was in that kind of place, and from whatever choices or things you come away from it, and obviously a spiritual journey is not a straight line. You're not always growing. Sometimes you go back to go forward, or you're taken back to learn something to then move forward. That's
if we just rephrase that, because I'm so particular about how we word things.
Okay.
Even though that is right, it is technically right as well, that, we're taken back, but we're only taken back because of our own actions.
Yeah.
So it's not that, because sometimes what a lot of people think is out there, that there's a God that is doing that to you intentionally. God's got a plan for you. Let me just put you there so you can learn this. It's not that. It's just the nature of how things work. We end up doing such an action, and then within Vaheguru's will, that action takes us back there.
That's what you're saying,
yes.
because it's
karmi up. It's with the karma. It's with your action that takes you back.
Choice. That's what I'm saying. Someone can be there and have that innate thing, but doesn't mean that it doesn't go, and you have to work.
Yeah, and then you still have to learn the lesson. But again, people say God's trying to teach you a lesson. No, God's not. Even at that point, when we go back, it's about, because not everyone does learn the lesson. So that wouldn't be God trying to teach us the lesson. Even at that point, it can still go two ways. We can either try and learn the lesson to what's put me back here, what's taken me out of that grace of being that person that was unselfish, that was very giving, that was very content. And now I'm not. I've obviously done something within this game of how it's set up to put me back there. And when I'm back there, not everybody does take that opportunity to learn what has brought me back here. And you can end up further back, or then you start to learn. Most of the time for myself, I end up, for some reason or another, needing more and more pain before I decide to learn the lesson. I'm not doing it consciously. But for whatever reason, I go back, and then I go, nah, it's not enough. I need to go more back, but not consciously, and just one of those idiots that end up getting more and more pain because I get it more and more wrong. And then eventually I think, wait there, I need to learn something here. You've got to take that responsibility. I'm doing something for me to be in this place. For me to suffer like this, I'm doing something. I'm obviously responding to this world in a way that is putting me there. So it's about learning that lesson. If we just go through those qualities, the 5, Suniai, Haath, not Suniai, and then the Sada Santok, then they obviously being the compassion, and it's one of my favorite ones. You're not supposed to have favorite qualities, but maybe one that just sticks out for me.
It's a starting point, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and how would you describe Daya, Panji?
Before I would describe it as using whatever Guruji is giving you to help those around you.
Okay.
But now I would say that it's using what Guruji is giving you for you first to then give more to everyone around you. Because I think a lot of people think they don't have they are. If they include themselves into it, and actually that's where it comes from. It's inside, so you have to include yourself in that they are.
So if you had to describe there as an emotion, because as having this physical body, brain, mind, it's expressed through this physical body as an emotion. How do you describe there as an emotion? What's the nature of it?
It's just peaceful. I think it doesn't matter what it is, you understand, or it gives you understanding. So it doesn't matter who it is or what the situation is. You have that understanding that there's something else behind it. So then you're okay.
I heard it being defined in a way that really, really resonated, and that was the nature of Daya as an emotion is experienced as when you want bala, when you want, you want the good of something, and you want to make something better, and when you see suffering, you want that suffering to come to an end. That's the feeling of Daya.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It gives, that's what I was saying. It gives you that understanding, so that you can see the that you can see a thing as a whole. So then you can help it as a whole, rather.
So if you was to give an example for it, because you mentioned that it's going to be for yourself too, and how that could be for ourselves is that if I'm going through something and I'm feeling a certain way, and having there for yourself then would mean that there's an emotion inside me that also wants my own suffering to end, and there's an energy that is willing to work on that as well. Yeah. And then the act that comes from it is when you said the kindness and helping someone, the act that comes from it then is dharam. Because there in itself isn't an external action, but in the action there could be there, but that action is then called dharam. So for example, now if you was dying of thirst, or you're just thirsty, yeah, well, maybe it's a bit more extreme because then you're suffering. Yeah. So if you're suffering in thirst and my heart initially said that, oh, wow, I don't want it to be suffering in that thirst. So that's the daya. And from there then comes the action, let me get Benji some water. And then that becomes the dharam.
Yes.
Yeah. When I actually give you the water. So there alone in itself is very powerful, and because not all times might not necessarily, actually saying that, I was going to say might not always be an action from it, and that could be true for some cases, but there in itself is so powerful and healing, because if you're now, again, using the example, we could switch the example around, but I'm just going to stick to it like this. It's just easier, right? For me, it gets complicated otherwise. So say if you now, like, you're hurting mentally, whatever, and then the action might there just be for me to listen with compassion. So the listening there to you would be the my dharam in that moment. But it can only be called dharam if there's daya in it. And then even if I need to then say a few words to you that are going to support you and comfort you, even them, they are only dharam, what I'm saying, within dharam, if they come from there. Where as I'm speaking to you, it's like there's an emotion that is saying that I want this pain to go. And then that's that there. So these are just things that you will naturally be if you're in that ocean, the ocean of virtues, which is where you're connected to Vaheguru inside. And I try and use these as an indicator when I'm not experiencing them to let myself know I've walked away from Vaheguru. And it's not, and then it's a self-reflection for myself to say, I need to go back to Vaheguru. Because these are the Sargun Sarup of Vaheguru. This is the manifestation of Vaheguru, these qualities are. Like, Vaheguru in the formless is beyond all of these. Because in that oneness, as that stillness, these don't need to be there present. That's just bliss. But this is the Sargun Sarup of Vaheguru. So then I tell myself that you've not with Vaheguru anymore. Like, go back. Like, Vaheguru's there, but I've walked away. But the thing is, during those moments, it's always easier to try and think that there must be an external fix. Because it's just the easiest thing to think at that point. So we've covered dharam, which is the fourth gun. And then we've got satya here. Because the first sat would be giving. And then the fifth one here, sach, now is, and there's also a pankti where the fifth one is spelled differently and they've spelled it as such. And so we could actually translate that truth to be purity. So over here we've got Sat Santok Daya Dharam Such Santanate Eho Mantalai, and this is by Guru Arjan Dev Ji. And they said that the saints have given me this month, this guidance, that these are the 5 that you need to know if you're with Vaheguru. And such purity, and the way I see purity, how would you see purity, Benji? What would it mean to be pure for you?
Trying to do what Guruji tells you to do.
Okay, I wouldn't have looked at it like that. That's really interesting.
Because I don't think, as a human being, I don't think you can, well, you could be, but I think you are pure because Guruji is pure. So, and Guruji is inside you in that sense, but then you have the layers of onions, if you will, that are not that, and it's peeling those back to get back to that purity.
Mm-hmm.
So
how could we start getting there at a practical level? So what are some of the practical things we could do then to start being more pure?
So doing what Guruji tells you to do. So if you're with Guruji's Kripa, blessed with Reth, starting with your Reth. Mm-hmm. If he gives you certain things to speak the truth, like don't lie. So work on not lying. He gives you the thing to do seva. So do what little bit of seva you're able to do, and make it a habit. And just keep working on it. It's a constant. It's a work in progress. It's a constant work in progress.
Of course. Yeah. And I think when I think of such, I think of
cleaning it out,
water, and then it's clear, something clear, and I always then think to myself, am I being clear? And I think I was speaking to my sister this morning. Something simple. as she was trying to plan her day and for her birthday, and she was planning to do something. She was trying to set something, and she needed to book something and pay for it for some of the family to go. And she kept frapping around, like she just wasn't pressing the book and paying for it, and she was going in circles. And she'll start then having a chat and then going back. Oh yeah, I need to do that. And then I just looked at Anna. Said, she said, my mind's just. I felt clear this morning, but I feel a bit, scattered now. I think I'm tired. I overslept, or after I went to sleep after Amratullah. I said, nah, it's not that. I said, you don't want to go there. And she said, you're right. I said, you're not being clear with yourself. Just be truthful to yourself first, at least, and then just say it out loud. She said, I don't want to go. I said, that's why you're not pressing that button. Just doing it to please other people. It's not what you want to do. And I think often when we're not always clear, and that can be a process, is to start practicing those steps.
100%.
To being more such or such with ourselves as well. And even if somebody's got a certain struggle, and if, sometimes like we've got a certain want, but then we'll try and do and then because we're so conditioned by, but Barney says this, Barney says that, so, and not fully grasping it, we shouldn't really have all these desires. So even though we've got it, we'll pretend we haven't. But that's not going to make that desire go away, pretending you haven't got it. So that's not being clear. And there's times we just need to be truthful to ourselves to start with. And if it helps, do it as a practice to say it out loud. Yeah, I do want that car. I'm not going to lie to myself, at least. Whether I'm going to then I can do the process after that. Do I need it? All of that, that comes with it. But first, at least be clear to yourself. And I think in that way, we can start practicing purity more and more and more, and starting to become more and more conscious. We're so afraid to sometimes just say it to even ourselves. And how are we going to get it to somebody else? And I think we can never work. When Maharaj is saying these Guna are Gaah, are deep, I think you can never work out the limit of what they are is. You can never say it's just this. It's so profound when you're in the experience of it. And I think when you're really there and living it, so many things won't make sense.
It's not conscious.
Logically. Yeah. And there's you can try and work out with your own mind and your intellect to say, actually, I would be like this, I would act like this, but you only know when you're in it what they actually is, what compassion actually is, what it really means to feel content. And you can try and work it out, but you only know when you're there. But I would really use these as an indicator to see where am I and how far am I, or how close am I. We go to the next one. Do you want to add anything to that?
In my mind at the moment, it's just tying them all together, because you were saying like starts with the daya, but then it's the dharam, the action. And a lot of people, from my own experience, will do the actions for other people. They forget to do them for themselves. And that comes from like self-reflection and stuff like that. And that's how you get your clarity, to get to that sach, that you're saying, that clearness. Yeah. It's just, I'm just connecting it all.
Yeah. No, I found it very interesting to see those come up in a list in that way. And then it makes so much sense what Professor Sahib Singh said, that the first Sat with an Onkar teamed up with Santookh would be where that means to be giving, of a giving nature, and then the last one will be such to practice truth. And I do quite like that analogy, Benji. I think it was kind of formulating in the morning, and then I just looked at the bottle there and it kind of just fell into place. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. There's loads of little bubbles in there, and those bubbles could represent like when we're not being clear to ourselves.
Got to filter it.
yeah. And but I think that in itself is a process to start to have the ability to be able to see what needs filtering out, and that will happen in different ways. I can't remember, I was talking about this recently, where that could come from just having a chat. You might bring it to my awareness, as long as it's with compassion, bringing it to my awareness, not one of those, they gandhanal par hai. Even that might be in compassion, to be honest, Yeah. So even that could be dharam. The act itself could be righteous if it's coming from compassion, because Maharaj did say, "Jin pat andar bahar guddad te phale sansar." As long as it's silky from inside, because that's what that pangti means. Might come out a bit coarse sometimes, as long as the silk is there, but we don't want to fool ourselves of the silk as well. It's going to genuinely be silk. And but it's so fine, the game. That's, again, I've just been having, only now, when we sit down to have these conversations, you realize when you're doing sangat of Gurmukhs and you're having these conversations, they're not a waste of conversation, and they all kind of start making sense. Like, what does it mean for this path to be so fine? And because literally it's such a fine balance, because you could be coming from compassion, you might even speak a little rough and coarse because now you want bala for the other person. But it could just take that slight thing to fall off, because then you could get growth. The moment angers come into it, even though you was doing so well, you was balancing perfectly, you had the compassion going on, is all silky, and then that just creeps in, and then bang, you're off, and then that's what I refer to. Then I've just walked away from Vaheguru again. But that's okay, because then as long as I keep telling myself, no, I want to go back. Yeah. I like it with Vaheguru. It's much better with Vaheguru. Yeah. We don't, I think just wording it like that itself, it sounds so much nicer. If we use that type of language for ourselves, instead of being so hard to ourselves. I can't believe you got angry. Oh my God. And if I just said to myself, I don't want to be here, I want to go back to Vaheguru, I think we've got a much better chance to walk away from that vikar, from that vice. Because to me, framing things are so important. And if it was just to frame something like that, and it's true, like, who wants to be there? Like, we all want to, we all rather be with Vaheguru. Like, who wants to be there? And that's the truth. But we sometimes be so hard on ourselves, we take longer to go back to Vaheguru.
You break it, like you said, you just break yourself even more. And you're shooting yourself down even more than having that compassion for yourself to say, look, you fell, get back up.
I was speaking to somebody yesterday at Benji, and she was saying that she's got mental health condition, and she's saying, I don't get to do this for my dad, I don't get to do this. And then she goes, and then I feel so guilty. And then other people have made her feel that she should feel guilty. I was like, but guilt takes you away from Vaheguru. you can use it as a first indicator to say something's not right. Yeah, I go, but if you decide to stay there, you're not going to get, you're just staying away from where your Nityanam's trying to take you. And sometimes we forget that this is all about God. And sometimes I'll hear people talk about Sikhi in such a way that God isn't even involved. It's like we've just got stuck on the railing. It's like it's just all about the railing. Like, isn't this about God? So I think we've covered Sara Guna ke Gaah. Yeah. Suniai Sheikh Peer Paatshah. Here Maharaj literally is saying that, so Sheikh, first of all, is a Muslim leader, and then a Peer is a Muslim saint, and then Paatshah is a king. So Maharaj is saying, like, with that deep inner listening to Vaheguru's name, that you obtain the status of these leaders, of these saints and kings. And I was just thinking that, like, what does that even mean? and I would say that that's what it means to be, that's what it means to be a king, doesn't it? When you're constantly connected to Vaheguru, and you're playing in that beautiful ocean of virtues, like, yeah, that's what it means to be on top of the world. And that's what it means to be a king. That's what it means to be a leader, when you're in that ocean of virtues. And that's a king that I'd love to be anyway. So, Viji, next one. Suniai Andhe Paaveh Raahu. So here Maharaj is saying that even those that are completely ignorant and blind, so blind here referring to them just completely ignorant, but when you start to really tune yourself with that true inner listening, that the path of how to walk in this world, which direction to go, that's where it comes from, is when we disconnect from inside, from that Naam, from Vaheguru speaking to us, then we can try and work it out. And that's why, like, Gurbani helps us and to rein us in. But we could still interpret it incorrectly. We could still, completely, we could forget that message. But that's why ultimately Gurbani is taking us back to inside and saying, when you remain connected to that deep inner voice of Vaheguru, it will never take you the wrong way. It's impossible. You can read a line of Gurbani, and because of your own interpretation, you could still take the wrong path. That's why the truth is, we've got so many people within the Panth. It's like, almost, I feel like they're following two different religions just because of their interpretation. You could literally just give them different names, but it's the same Bani. That's why Guru Sahib said, like, the Bani is to take you back in, is to show you that this is the actual way to go, this is the path. And we all know how we kick ourselves when we go against that, because that will never get you to go against Vaheguru. That
it's like a road, and you've got hills either side, and like one is the walls, if you will, your boundary to keep you on the path, heading the right way, and not to fall off the hill, kind of thing.
And just from your own experience, when you like having those moments where you're deeply connected to that deep inner knowing of how that has guided you in your life, has it ever been wrong?
No.
It can't be, because it's Vaheguru. We forget that it's not just, because sometimes these terms have been belittled, that, oh, just went from your intuition. So this isn't just the intuition from your life experiences. This is from the intelligence of the creator itself we're talking of. Because there is that, we spoke about that in one of the podcasts, there's that intuition that comes from your life experiences. Some people are very in tune with that and they're able to just tap into that. But there's something deeper than that. That is the antarjami, the knower. When we say that Vaheguru is Sat Chit Anand, that chit is referring to that knowing. And have you ever gone against the knowing?
Yeah. Paid for it very heavily.
It's heavy, isn't it? Yeah. But I experience it with not even big life decisions, with the smaller things in life as well.
It's the ripple.
Yeah. From the simplest thing for even sleep. Say if I've slept enough and my insides told me you're done, but it might have only been 3-4 hours, but I just know it's right. And then I'll tap into my intellect and my memory. Oh, but the doctors have said 7 to 8 hours, and I need to give myself more rest, my body, and then I follow that instead. So I leave God behind, and I feel mashed, like my head's banging, and I was fresh the first time round. No, and then I go with the doctors, and then my whole day's wrecked. It's that faith, isn't it? And if we could just get that faith into saying, like, yeah, that's the one. So I've given a very light example. I call it light, but it's not light, because it actually then will affect my whole day. And then for the bigger things in life as well. No? And
it's all those little things that add up and make the big things.
And I suppose we can build our faith through the smaller things. And the more we follow it, naturally, even today, they say that psychologically, to build faith, and they did this huge study. What they found was, how do people truly build faith? So I could say I've got faith in this, or in God, or whatever, or in my religion, or in the scriptures. And they say, so the people can say all these words. But what they found with these studies are, when people have true deep faith is when they have snippets of evidence through their life. And that's then proven through studies that these are the people that have got deep faith that doesn't budge. So for example, if I listen to that once, and even though my mind is still telling me you're going to be tired, you're going to need a nap, but I'm actually feeling fresh. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense. You've only had 4 hours, and I'm going. It's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I've been spot on. And then you do that a few times, and you get evidence. Wow, this actually works when I listen to that. And so whether I say I've got faith or not, that is naturally building faith for me. And that then becomes deep, that faith does. And whenever you've not gone with that voice, that is also evidence, isn't it? When it goes, as they call it, pear-shaped. And I think going forward, this is one of the only ways that in today's world for us to be able to start translating Gurbani is through these real conversations. This is how it can become relatable. It's not just there out of reach.
And everyone will have, if they reflect, everyone will have that evidence for themselves. Whether what not to do or what to do, they'll have that evidence. It's just being aware of it.
Something comforting from this line because Andhe here could also not just spiritually ignorant. If we took Andhe here to be somebody that hasn't really got a sharp intellect and doesn't have a lot of book knowledge, and I see this sometimes in like the generation, like my parents' generation, some of the, especially a lot of the women that are not educated, and sometimes they feel really low about themselves, but I see a lot of intuition in them, and I see that this is what, like, this could also mean this. Maharaj is giving you that comfort that I hear it all the time. People say, I want to learn more about Sikhi, but they know so much already, and I want to learn more. And I'm like, what do you want to learn? That's fine, but don't think that that's going to take you to where you want to go. Yeah, you know enough, really. And what Maharaj is saying here is that you could be pretty blind in, you might not have a lot of knowledge, but if you follow that, if you're connected and you go through the processes of cleansing yourself, the noise of your mind, and be more in tune with that, you'll know where to go. You'll know how to walk in this life. You don't need a lot of knowledge for that. Because I hear a lot of people beating themselves up. I don't know enough. Maharaj didn't say you need to know loads intellectually. Maharaj says one word can do it for you.
Just do it.
just get on with it. And then we've got the last Pankti. Is that the last Pankti? Yeah, then obviously Nanak Bhagta. So now we've got Suniai Haath Hoveh Asgaahu. So Haath is our hand. Yeah. And Hoveh Asgaahu. Asgaahu is referring to, again, a deep ocean. And Gaah is the deep, and then As is referring to the ocean. But here the ocean isn't the ocean of virtues. Here the ocean is this world that is not so easy to get across, to walk through, because it comes with us having to walk through it with. The reason why it's so difficult is because of our own attachments. Guru Sahib made it clear so many times in Gurbani, it's because of our own attachments we drown. But what Maharaj is saying here is that as difficult as this life is, this world is to get through, and it can feel like, oh my God, how am I going to get across that ocean? That's deep. I'm so attached. This is just crazy. I'm not going to get there. I'm never going to get across there to Vaheguru. Seems so far away. But what Maharaj is saying here is actually, when you again tune yourself to that inner knowing, to Vaheguru, then what seemed so deep and you could never get there, but it's just like it's only hand deep now. Haath Hoveh. That ocean's become that deep. And it's like, whoa, how did I get there? That's all that's left. Just that deep. And because that is through that inner knowing and being in tune with that, this life won't seem so difficult. It's because we disconnect from that and we get caught and entangled in our attachments is what is making this world look so deep as an ocean, and we think this is impossible. There's no way I can get across this. And it's because we become disconnected and we're not following that anymore. And it's so amazing that we have this in Gurbani, in Japji Sahib, these type of lines, because I think the way it was translated before, it wasn't giving much, but it just makes it so much more relatable. In a sense, I think, no, more than relatable, what it's making me feel is that it really wants me to connect to remain connected to that inner knowing, and whatever is coming in my way, whatever, the marks that are coming up in that where I'm not being clear, I can start removing them so I can hear more, so I can listen, Suniai, and keep listening. And that's why you'll see a lot of Mahapurakhs and Gurmukhs, when you ask them a question, they won't always answer straight away because they're not in reaction mode. And I've seen this so many times. You ask a Gurmukh a question, and for a moment they'll just close their eyes. And they'll just sit and go deep in themselves. And then they'll slowly speak to you. And I've seen many of them, and they'll have this squinched eyes. And you could tell they're speaking from a much deeper layer. And that's Suniai, they're listening before they tell you something. And most of us have experienced elements of that in our life. So it's not so alien, because Vaheguru is in all of us. And there's always been moments in our life where, whether it knowingly or unknowingly, they do it consciously, they're able to just take that moment. They know what to do, how to do it. But there's times in our lives we end up doing it unknowingly. There's this moment of just surrender. We've just Har Pariyo Swami ke dware Dije Buddh Bibeka. That is the Buddh Bibek. That is the Bibek Buddh, means it helps you to separate what is true and what isn't, what is false and what is true. And that's what Bibek means. Bibek is you're able to distinguish the true path, the true way. And there's times when we just surrender. Sometimes we do it without us knowing how we've done it, and it just happens, and we just know. But the Gurmukhs know how to do it consciously all the time. And that's why it's good for us as well to sometimes, if we're going to be in reactive mode, just wait, just take a breath and go inside, because Vaheguru's there. Vaheguru's there, and if you're not able to let go and hear anything, just do ardas. Just say, I've tried. Because if you look here, Maharaj is saying that Nakiya Karam Aneka, I've tried so much, just going crazy, trying, And then for a moment, Maharaj says, well, have you tried Har Pariyo? Have you tried Har Pariyo Swami ke dware? Because then you'll get the Bibek Buddh from there of what to really do. And it's a moment by moment game, I feel. It's just moment by moment. We'll keep slipping out. And then you just got to say, okay, Aja, wapas Aja. Come back. And then you just keep going back. So on that, Penji, Suniai Haath Hoveh Asgaahu, just I can imagine this ocean in front of me, and I'm thinking, whoa, how do I get across that? And in that, I'm seeing all these weeds and this entanglements, my attachments, desperately trying to hold on to things and thinking, how am I going to get through? And then I think, all right, it's okay. Vaheguru show me, and I can just see that's all that's left. Try and visualize these things. Was there anything that's coming to mind for yourself before we move on?
I think about the things that I would consider I'm attached to, being a mum. Obviously, I'm attached to my child in certain levels, but I always remind myself of the Bhakti that you read in Rara Sahib, and the flamingo,
the crane bird. I know it's translated as a flamingo.
But yeah. And I just remind that, when I'm worrying about Dookh, he's got it.
Yeah.
And just take a breath, like you said. Just take a breath and remember that Guruji's got it, and it's already taken care of. That's what I was just thinking. And just knowing that, then I don't get bogged down, because otherwise I could get bogged down with worrying. There's so many times, especially when she's been ill or something, and I'll get bogged down with the worry. Whereas if I remind myself of that Guruji's got her and these things, then I can do more productive things in that situation that'll help that situation and help me in that situation as well. So that's why it's important to,
and that is that hard in that moment you just lose into like giving yourself to Vaheguru, and it's that moment by moment acceptance. That acceptance doesn't mean you're not gonna do anything outward action towards it of getting her better. But what a lot of people don't realize is the action that will come from that place will be babek, will be what's actually needed, and not out of our desperation, out of that obsessiveness, holding on, where so many of our actions end up coming from. Yeah, so the Pankti he was referring to Ude Uda Vesa Kosa. There's another beautiful Pankti by Guru Ramdas Ji, similar to that, where they say that Jaisi Gagan, is it Jaisi Gagan Firanti Udti? Is it Firanti? Udti, yeah. So Guru Ramdas Ji says, Jaisi Gagan Firanti Udti Kapde Bhage Wali. They're saying that this crane bird that is wearing white, Bhage means white clothes, so she's white in color, this crane bird. And she's Firanti, flying through in circles in the sky. But the next line's so beautiful. Then Maharaj says, Oho rakhe cheet. But within her cheet, she keeps piche bich bachare, in her child, within her chit, within her focus and conscious mind. Nit hirde sar samali. She's constantly looking after her child within her heart. And that is... And there's just a Qudrati power, this natural power that her... And I didn't realize, and I didn't look at it like that, but the Man Mein Simran Karya, that Pankti, from the Ude Uda Vesa Kosa, it's actually saying that there's such a Shakti within a mother that she could... And I know this is referring to kind of surrendering to God, but like even on the other level, like we forget sometimes some of the abilities that we have, that the Shakti and the power of the mind can do so much, even for our children. And just having them in our chit in that way, it could teach them things that we could just from having that thought towards them. And I just find it kind of amazing sometimes it's reading prayer. These things. Sorry?
The thought is prayer.
Yeah. So now finishing off with Nanak Bhagta, Sada Vigaas, Suniai Dookh Paap ka Naas. Here then Maharaj Ji saying to bring these 4 paudiyan to an end. Shouldn't say an end, because this is never ending for us, this journey with Gurbani. And Nanak Bhagta Sada Vigaas. Maharaj is saying that the Bhagats are those, the devotees are those that are constantly in Vigaas, constantly in bliss. And what that is saying to us is it's just they're this constantly blossoming flower, but they've become like that because they don't disconnect from that voice. They only like that because of that. And they're in this moment by moment acceptance, and whatever is coming to them, that's all they listen to. Because from there, they can never be suffering. Suniai Dookh Paap Naas. We create Paap. Our mistakes come from not listening. When we stop listening to Vaheguru from inside. And that's what is causing us Dookh. The pain, the suffering is coming from that. And we've already discussed that it's been very obvious when we don't. And for me, like I was saying, it's for every little thing. I'll even know from inside when a piece of food, I shouldn't be eating it. And I eat it, and I will suffer. But it'd be so clear. And I think the reason why I share that is to say it's that accurate, that voice is. It for everything. And it's just beyond what we could comprehend. Because I'll tell you why it's so amazing, because I was with the Gurmukh the other day actually, and who's traveling back from a program, and there's another Gurmukh, and he just handed us this pizza that was made like really thin crust, and it was amazing. And he says, "Oh, eat this on the way home. You know, somebody just made it fresh for me. I'll give it to you guys." And opened the box, I looked at it, and I just thought something like just didn't feel right, but I went against it. The other Singh ate it, he was fine. For me, it was coming up after, it didn't digest. But Vaheguru already told me, and like for the smallest of things, Vaheguru guides us if
listening.
Yeah. And you know what? Like not everybody even hears it though.
If it's been lulled out.
Yeah, and we've spoke about that in the other podcast. But and sometimes I feel that I'm so fortunate that I hear it, and I think, and then I scare myself. I think if I keep not listening so many times, because I do listen to, not that bad, and I think, Vaheguru, are you going to stop talking to me? And I just think, like, come on, Baljeet Singh, sort this out. Like, you don't want that to stop. Then you will be in trouble. Yeah. So, yeah, I think for me, it's very relatable and practical. I see the Dookh like that in an instant. And, and I'd much rather be constantly blossoming and be like that, like a beautiful flower, And I think the more we, it's from these conversations, isn't it? Like, there's always that hope. I hope I could just awaken. I hope I could just do it more. Start listening more. Sangaji, I think it's been an amazing journey through the Suniai Paaveh and this deep listening. And like we said, we went through the stages. We can start learning how to listen inside by increasing our focus first on the everyday things in life. Just, we're having a conversation now, and for me to practice that, just really listen to Benji and when she's talking, and not just wait to say what I want to say. I do that a lot, but I'm really trying to overcome that, and learning how to actually listen to people more and more. I think I'm getting better, so pat on the back. But from those practices, we can start listening inside more and more. And so it's like building that muscle almost. And so excited now and then from the next episode, we'll be moving to the Manne Paudhiyan, about having then that complete faith in what we're hearing. That's the next stage, is not just hearing it, but actually having complete faith and following that sweetly, that voice. That's another conversation on its own, which we'll be having for the next 4 sessions. So Sangaji, thank you so much for joining us. Please keep coming on this journey with us, and let's all pray to Vaheguru, to Guru Sahib, to continuously help us to listen to that deep inner voice of Vaheguru Ji that is inside of all of us. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh Ji.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Please donate and help spread Guruji's message. Link is in the description below. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.